Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, New Mexico's outgoing Secretary of Indian Affairs breaks down the progress made in the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous persons.
When I look at what's been done across the nation, New Mexico really is a leader.
And meet Miss Indian New Mexico 2022, her inspiring message to other young people who want to make a change in their communities. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. New Mexico Secretary of Indian Affairs Lynn Trujillo has been at the forefront of Indigenous issues in our state for years. Earlier this month, the governor's office announced the secretary will step down at the end of the month, but not before making key progress on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous persons. In about 10 minutes, senior producer Lou DeVizio asks how the state will work to implement new recommendations from a state task force. We're also going to hear from the first ever Native American woman to travel to space. As you're watching this, astronaut Nicole Mann is on the International Space Station carrying out a 6-month mission for NASA. In about 20 minutes, she tells our Antonia Gonzalez what she's doing up there and what it means to her to represent her Indigenous heritage in such a unique field. At the bottom of the hour, environment reporter Laura Pascas takes us to the Albuquerque Bosque to show how lucky we are to have such a thriving ecosystem inside our state's largest city. But we start with New Mexico in Focus correspondent Antonia Gonzalez and her conversation with 2022's Miss Indian New Mexico, Alicia Coriz.
Miss Indian New Mexico, welcome to New Mexico in Focus.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation, Antonia. It means a lot. It's, nice to see you in community. We've had a lot of different encounters in all of my different hats that I wear, so I'm glad to see you in a new hat.
Well, please introduce yourself.
Hello, let's go traditional. Go at sea, Amera Hope, Alicia Christmas, Guillaume Suta, Schultzen Hana Bokwitz, Hin L, Miss Indian New Mexico 54 for 2022 to 2023. Hello, my name is Alicia Coriz. I am from the Pueblo of Santo Domingo, and I am your Miss Indian New Mexico 54 for the 2022 to 2023 year.
And you just recently were crowned with this title. You're an ambassador for Native women, a role model for Native youth. Tell me a little bit about your role.
Yes, it is such an amazing experience so far. We've been a month in, a little bit over a month, and just really understanding that I am a public servant to not only our 23 tribal nations in the state of New Mexico, but for the state as a whole, as well as understanding that this title is a pillar of hope for all of our communities. And it's also another space for me to utilize this platform to call forth and inspire others to, continue to be the solutions to their community's needs.
And what was your platform when you were running?
My platform has always and will be empowerment through community building. And what I mean by that is, when we get our community people together to, have conversations and connect with one another and continue to build a deeper understanding of the issues and the impacts that the challenges that we face. This is a time where we're able to meet and continue to build community together. And that's all part of how we honor ourselves through kinship, through community. And as well as when we find that connection, we feel that we have the support system. We are building that system in order for us to feel empowered, to have a voice, and continue to regroup as a community and find the solutions and be the solutions.
And your role is not only just visiting tribal communities and going to tribal events, that's definitely a big part of sharing Native culture, but also just to the general public. So why is that important to share Native culture with the general public and to also let them know that, Native people are here, still here, and living cultures?
Yes, it definitely is such a great way for us to educate one another. And that can also go back to my platform as building community with the shared understanding and education. That's when we can truly relate to one another and find the similarities between ourselves and other communities to build solidarity. So when we work on educating our general public and understanding the unique traits amongst our Pueblo people, the Navajo Nation, and our Apache tribes, as well as honoring the relationship that we have with our Ute relatives to the north, it all connects back. It all connects to we are still all citizens of this great country that we call home, and that we can continue to, uplift each other because we all have resources that we need, and there's always a great opportunity for us to skill share and build community.
And November celebrates Indigenous people with Native American Heritage Month. Tribal communities across the country celebrate our resilience all the time, not just during one month. But what are some of the highlights that you've been able to have so far?
Yes, and so, with November being a month that is able to highlight our accomplishments and our achievements through, since we have been here since time immemorial, it definitely is a way for us to bring to light the achievements and the wins and celebrate ourselves, and also to continue to uplift the needs that we have, the issues that we may be facing that we need help with. This is a time where we can, call for that action, and as well as to, honor the truth of our existence here in what we call the United States of America, and as well as in the land that we call New Mexico as well, and honoring making space for our Indigenous peoples to have a lens on them. And we also recognize that it is, a time where a lot of pressure is on our Native peoples to show up and continue, to build the awareness and the education around our issues. But it's also a time for us to celebrate with one another and continue to uplift each other. As well as, some of the events that I've been a part of is, of course, on November 1st, myself as a Pueblo person, this is a time where we honor our ancestors. So this was, a great way to, a grounding way for us to start with, celebrating our indigeneity and our heritage and the cultures that we come from, because we carry that wherever we go, in whatever spaces we are, whether it is as an ambassador as myself, or whether we're in, boardrooms or continuing to show up in different ways. We carry our upbringing, we carry our values, our language, our knowledge, and that will never change. And it's always another way for us to become resilient because we're carrying that with us.
And you talked a little bit about challenges. There are a lot of challenges facing young Native people today, including when it comes to education. There's still, poor graduation rates from high school, but you are interested in education as well and higher education. Why is that important for Native youth to finish high school and also maybe even pursue higher education?
Yes, I think that, education is always a lifelong journey for all of us, because we're always learning, whether we are aware of it or not. We are taught different lessons from different people that come into our lives, and as well as understanding that we have an education we have our public education that helps us to continue to be contributing members of the society, and that also comes into how do we become a contributing community member, not only in the Western society or the Western society, but also to understand what it means to be a contributing member in our own tribal communities. With education, it definitely is giving that level playing field and giving all of our people a chance to learn and contribute in a beneficial way. And that looks, whether that's going to a higher education institution such as college or a technical school, we honor all the journeys that education, what education looks like for our people. And that's always another way of us to continue to develop ourselves, because we are always ever changing, ever growing. And that's the way that we can be elders in training. That's the way to go.
I like that, elders in training. Well, as a young person, you're a longtime youth leader, and you have been locally and statewide. You've served as statewide and beyond as a youth leader. So why is youth leadership important? Do you see that older generations are now embracing younger voices?
Yes, I think that, reflecting on my journeys and the relationship that we have, Antonia, with myself working with the All Pueblo Council of Governors Youth Committee, which I am the chair of, and also being a co-founder and member of the New Mexico State Indigenous Youth Council. And, this is always like a great catalyst for change, is the inclusion of our young people and their voices and their needs, or their initiatives, if you will. And, being part of the conversation too, because as we're navigating the change-making and decision-making process, this is a time where, it not only affects our community members today, but this is beginning to make the changes for our future generations and for those that are going to be living in a society that we're creating now. So this is definitely a way for us to be informed. That would have to be the important part of this whole, the whole inclusion, is educating each other about what is going on in our state, being civically engaged on the issues, and how do we all play a role in this, not only with us being part of a tribal nation, not only us being part of a tribal nation, it's also how do we recognize our relationship with the state, and how do we recognize that further relationship with our federal government, because we're all intertwined in this. And if we don't utilize our voice now, we are not being able to voice the needs and creating the world that we want to see and the beneficial change that is much needed.
And were there recommendations that came out of the Youth Council that went directly to the governor and the state legislature?
Oh, yes. As part of our Indigenous Youth Council, the main focus of our work was to call out the inequities that we saw during the pandemic, as well as honoring the holistic wellness journey that's needed in order for our communities to heal. So with that, we were able to continue to create a report and recommendations from our Youth Wellness Summit that was held with including all of the voices from our tribal nations throughout the state. And so this was a time for us to, gather all of the voices and the needs from our young people, from, all the way down that are still in high school, into how are we engaging our college and adult community members as we navigate towards being fully, young adult community members, and engaging them as they make their journey to being full adult community members.
And so how long is your reign as Miss Indian New Mexico? Is it a year?
Yes, it will be a year. So I was crowned on September 24th of 2022. And so I have a year. So now we're counting down and, just still continuing to put forth the ideas that I have. And for me personally, I see this as a way of healing our communities and bringing that spirit of relationship building and kinship in our communities, and bringing back positivity and love and joy back into our communities, especially after healing after the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still ongoing. But it's important for us to continue to push forward. That's part of the resiliency that we are looked to and celebrated for. And also doing that in a safe manner, because we recognize that we have to protect all of our community members, especially our elders, because we saw, unfortunately throughout our communities, we saw the loss of that, of our knowledge keepers. And this is our time for us to, go and connect with them and, continue to hold that so that we may pass it down to the future generation as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today on New Mexico PBS, and happy National Native American Heritage Month.
Yes, thank you, Antonia. It means a lot, and definitely continue to hold space and continue to honor and carry your culture in whatever spaces you may be in, because that is who we are as Indigenous peoples, and that's what we continue to carry throughout not only the month of November, but throughout our lives and how we engage with people each and every day. So thank you.
So because the space station is in microgravity, there's a lot of things that we can do that you simply can't do on Earth. So one of my favorite that I'm excited to participate in is this biofabrication facility. And we're actually growing human cells on the space station. So they've already grown a partial meniscus and some heart cells. And this like 3D printing of cells is difficult to do on Earth because of the gravity. But in space, they're discovering that they can create better, stronger, more intact cells.
For years, a largely invisible crisis has been burdening Indigenous families across New Mexico: unsolved missing persons cases. Jurisdictional issues, bureaucratic hoops, and cultural divides have all contributed to the problem, but this year a state task force took a significant step by releasing a formal response plan. It includes recommendations for streamlining law enforcement communication while developing community outreach and prevention programs. Secretary of Indian Affairs Lynn Trujillo, she recently announced she'd be leaving her position at the end of November, but in her time with the administration, she was instrumental in the development of both the task force and the state response plan. And late last month, senior producer Lou DeVizio sat down with the secretary to ask how the recommendations in that plan will be put into place.
There's been some encouraging progress in the effort to acknowledge, solve, and prevent missing persons cases, particularly among Indigenous people. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives Task Force released its state response plan earlier this year. There's been some legislative action recently. Are you encouraged with the progress that's being made here in our state?
I really am. I think when I look at what's been done across the nation, New Mexico really is a leader. We've done a lot in terms of establishing the task force, expanding the task force, and as you mentioned, issuing the state response plan earlier this year, and then now implementing it. And so I think, we've done remarkable here in a very short amount of time.
That state response plan, it identifies 6 main objectives. For those of you watching, you can read it online. We have links on our YouTube page and social media whenever you click on this story. But I don't want to get into the particulars of each one of those 6 objectives. But how important is it to identify particular areas of need and have them in writing so that we can go out now and address those?
Well, I mean, it's a roadmap, right? And it's an important plan that wasn't only for the task force, it's for everyone. We've been sharing it widely. And so I think it's helped our federal partners, our tribal partners, and our state partners, our legislators. We shared it with them, and then the governor. So it really provides that roadmap, and I think it also helps with accountability in terms of what the state can do, as well as federal and tribal governments.
That brings me to the inaugural Missing in New Mexico Day, and that was one of the recommendations made in the response plan. The goal is obviously to help raise awareness of the problem, but other events or resources that can have a tangible impact for people who are dealing with a crisis like this?
Sure. So this event is the first of its kind here in the state of New Mexico. I think it's important to note that it was a result of legislation that was introduced and passed, and so it'll happen every year in the state of New Mexico, and it's for all missing persons, and really provides not only an opportunity for awareness and education, but provides an opportunity for families and individuals to come to the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center and file a missing persons report and or to update an existing report. We've taken steps to make sure that there are areas for families and to talk with law enforcement privately. Just want to encourage them to bring information, but also, You know, it is part of, or can be part of, a healing process where you might be able to connect with other people who are missing family members as well. So I just, even though people might be hesitant, I think it's an opportunity for them to maybe start to find answers for themselves and for their family members about their missing loved one.
Now, law enforcement, of course, plays a big role in investigating and prosecuting these cases, and bolstering those efforts is one of the objectives laid out in that response plan. What are some of the logistical difficulties right now when it comes to investigating these cases, things like information sharing between agencies like the FBI and tribal law enforcement?
Yeah, so when we started to explore this issue here in New Mexico, there was various data points, and one of the reasons why that happens is because of the different reporting systems, and a lot of times they don't talk to each other, and a lot of times some agencies don't talk to each other. Because of the task force and the work of the task force, law enforcement was at the table and involved in the task force and in informing part of the state response plan and providing different recommendations for starting to break down these barriers. I think as a result of the work here in New Mexico, we've seen some of that starting to happen, and more agencies working together, sharing information, but also more importantly, sharing that information with our families and individuals who are looking for their loved ones.
I know there's a cultural factor to this too. When we spoke to the FBI special agent in charge about his agency's role and his investigators' roles, he told us that when the FBI or a non-tribal entity gets involved navigating some of those cultural differences is vital to understanding the details of a missing persons case. Does the state response plan call for any sort of special training for these officers so that when they go into these situations, they know how to handle what can be a delicate cultural situation sometimes?
Yes, actually, one of the strategies that's listed in the plan is in relation to training and making sure that there's training for law enforcement. I think there's opportunities with respect to state police to receive information in their training about MMIWP and even human trafficking. I know is an issue related to MMIP, and so there are some recommendations. I think for it to be informed by community is really important. I'd like to see some of that begin to happen, but yes, the task force did identify more training.
Now, you mentioned community. How important is the role of community in identifying and preventing these situations where a friend or a neighbor ends up missing?
I mean, community is at the core of the task force and what we do. They're vital. We need community. We need their trust, and we need to listen to them. And I think a lot of that is represented in the state response plan. The task force was expanded by executive order by Governor Lujan Grisham, and part of that was to add additional community members. It was really important for their voice to be heard, and so we continue to do that. I mean, the task force meetings, they are open to the public and create a safe space so that we can be inclusive and hear from individuals and community members, other partners. It's just really important because this is a collaborative effort.
Of course, the long-term goal of the state response plan is to prevent these cases from happening in the first place. Mm-hmm. And that's why the plan spells out other necessary societal changes, things like education, career training, expanded professional opportunities for Indigenous people. How do these things factor into the long-term prevention plan?
Well, I think when we look at MMIP, there's a whole host of issues. One is in relation to housing and providing for support services for housing. Education is really important, I think, for many reasons, not only in terms of the awareness of the crisis here in New Mexico, but also for preventative efforts, and I think especially focused on youth and educating them about MMIWR so that they can be aware of avoiding risk, it also helps in risk prevention. And the task force is really engaged in focusing and wanting to expand and have more education and outreach opportunities that they can participate in.
Fall is when the sandhill cranes return to the valley for winter. Today we appreciate their primordial calls. And the clunky grace of their landings in the river, where they shelter for the night away from predators.
A crew of NASA astronauts is 1 month into a 6-month mission on the International Space Station. NASA SpaceX 5 launched October 5th, and on board was the first ever Native American woman to travel to space. Nicole Mann is crew commander of the SpaceX 5 mission, and she caught up with New Mexico in Focus correspondent Antonia Gonzalez before she took off.
How excited are you about this? This is going to be your first time, right?
This will be my first time to space. Yes, I joined NASA back in 2013, and so I've been training ever since. We've been training specifically for this mission for the past year, and we are ready to go, ready to launch.
And what is your role going to be?
So I'm the commander of the spacecraft. So I will fly myself and 3 other crewmates. We will launch from Kennedy Space Center in a Dragon spacecraft, which is built by SpaceX. And we will take a day or so to get to the International Space Station, and we'll stay on board for about 6 months to execute our mission. Our spacecraft will stay attached that entire time. Then at the end of the mission, we'll come back home and we'll splash down off the coast of Florida.
And what are some of the key parts of the mission? Is there something that is going to be studied or looked at, or what's going to happen during the 6 months?
During the 6 months on board, we have about 250 scientific experiments that we will be able to partake in and execute for the principal investigator on the ground. And some of those are technology demonstration to help us in further human exploration. A lot of them are scientific investigations and research to benefit humans back on Earth, though. So because the space station is in microgravity, there's a lot of things that we can do that you simply can't do on Earth. So one of my favorite that I'm excited to participate in is this biofabrication facility. And we're actually growing human cells on the space station. So they've already grown a partial meniscus and some heart cells. And this like 3D printing of cells is difficult to do on Earth because of the gravity. But in space, they're discovering that they can create better, stronger, more intact cells. And so hopefully I'll be a part of that effort.
And as a Native person, we know that there are some Native people who have chosen and have worked for NASA before in the past. So what does that mean to you?
To me, it's really important. I think your background and your heritage is an important part of who you are and your family and the community that brought you up. And so I think it's important also then to share with our communities what the amazing things that all of the people that we grew up with are executing and what they're doing. And so hopefully there's some young Native kids that are looking and see what amazing things, what amazing opportunities that they have in front of them. And I mean, a lot of those barriers that used to exist are really being broken down. And so I think that's some good messaging that we really want to communicate specifically to the younger generation.
And especially when it comes to getting girls and women involved, and there are programs across the country and in Indian country that encourage young girls to get interested in STEM. Why is that so important?
I think that's important because I think there's many young girls that grow up not realizing that these are options for them. You know, for example, growing up in Northern California, I was interested in math and science, and I thought, you know, it'd be really cool to go to space one day. But the thought of being an astronaut, honestly, never crossed my mind because I never saw anybody that was from, you know, my background or my area that had done something like that. And so I think really just communicating those opportunities. And then if people are interested, then we need to help them. We need to have a program. We need to have teachers and mentors that are there to kind of shepherd them along the way. It's important to have that support.
And so when you get home after the mission, and looking forward to being up there for 6 months, what are you gonna do when you get back? And what do what can we see in the future from you?
So when I get back, I think I'll be excited just to be outside and feel the wind on my face and the sun. That will be something I will definitely miss. There'll be a period of time to rehabilitate back to 1G. It can be a little tough on your body, so I'll do that. And then I'll look on to the next mission. I'll be able to support current missions on the International Space Station. We will have flown, hopefully, Artemis 1 back to the moon by then. And so we'll be looking at future opportunities, whether that be in low Earth orbit or maybe something on the moon. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. And so I'm looking forward to all of those.
And where can people follow? Where can they watch? And especially, I'm sure, people tuning in from across Indian country are going to want to follow you on this mission.
Absolutely. I think nasa.gov is the easiest way to follow. NASA's also on Facebook and Insta and TikTok. And so for the young social media crowd, there's a lot of ways to reach out and engage with the space program and all the really cool things that we're doing in space. And hopefully we'll have some young engineers or astronauts out there that will help us in the future.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Nicole Mann. Good luck and best wishes to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I kind of felt that the Dene are real anchored to the Spanish flu, and I think the Spanish flu epidemic really had a huge impact on how Navajos feel about death and their fear of it. Because before that, the research really doesn't show that. It's like they're moving on to the next world. It's a rebirth. And then at some point it turns into this evil monster. And for me, I felt like this is a good time to have these discussions. Instead of hiding from them, we need to face them.
During the last century, a piece of our state's identity has been formed around nuclear weapons. Earlier this month, our Land senior producer Laura Paskus spoke to a watchdog group about a new plan to increase production of a component in those weapons. This week, she explores the legacy of uranium mining in our state. Laura talks to an Indigenous artist who is all too familiar with the pain and loss mining has caused the communities nearby. DeHaven Solomon Chaffins communicated that complicated history through her exhibit, Radon Daughter, on display earlier this year at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center.
Hi, DeHaven. Thanks for being here with me today.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it.
So I'm excited to talk about your exhibit, Radon Daughter, that's at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center right now. But I wanted to start with a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I'm originally born in, was originally born in Portsmouth, Virginia. My dad was stationed out there in the Marine Corps. So that's where I was born. And then we gradually moved back to California again. That's where my dad was stationed in Camp Pendleton. But then periodically we'd go back to Laguna Pueblo and stay with my family out there. That was my grandparents and my uncles. So I really enjoyed that part because, you know, you get to see the different, I guess, the aspects of how living like culturally and then living off and on the reservation, I guess it would be. So I really enjoyed it, and but I enjoyed being on the Pueblo more so because I got to spend time with my, like I said, my grandparents and relatives.
So can you describe the landscape at Pueblo Laguna, maybe for people who've never been there before, or like what that landscape especially looked to you like when you were a kid or growing up?
Well, I mean, what I remember and what I saw was just mesas everywhere. I mean, they lived in the village of Powati, which is located right in Laguna Pueblo. And what I saw was just various shapes of, you know, mesas and, you know, cedar trees and just really pretty. But then when I looked maybe to the south, I saw, you know, the uranium mine, which I thought at the time when I was young, I thought it was more or less resembled a big ant pile, how it just tiered into one big giant thing. But I didn't, you know, at that time I didn't know that's what it was. Later on, consider it one of the world's largest open pit uranium mines. And it was less than 1,000 feet away from where my grandparents lived.
Can you talk about what it was like to have the mine so close?
It felt like, you know, just this man-made anthill, basically, just a man-made anthill out there. But when the sirens would go off, you know, that meant like everybody would close their doors and, you know, shut everything up, because depending on how the wind was blowing, the wind would come from the mine. And of course, all the little particles and everything would float towards the pueblo. And so that's basically how I just saw everything. And then when the cloud blew, the dust would rise up, and it just seemed to me like a dragon, you know, turning over in his sleep, and like kind of, you know, why am I waking up? And this dust plumes come up, just like how the dragons would, you know, have the fumes come up. So it was like that. It was just kind of almost a fairy tale in a sense, but then also the reality of, later on I would know the reality of what it really was.
I was reading about the mine. It operated from the 1950s to the 1980s, and so it's been closed now for 40 years, but still hasn't been cleaned up. Can you talk a little bit about the other the impacts that the mine has had on the community and people's health?
The impacts have been probably cancer, the main one, and a lot of illnesses that maybe we never really saw, or the people never saw. That was really kind of just traumatizing. Just taking, you know, everything it saw, the trees dying, everything being monitored, you know, now, like with the EPA. So it became very scary, you know. But like I said, when you're small, you don't really see those things until you're older. And I just remember, you know, people passing away, you know, including from my own family, from things we never even heard of. So it was really sad and strange at the same time.
Through your pieces that are on exhibit, when people look at that exhibit, Radon Daughter, as a whole, what do you hope that they take away from that?
I hope they take away, I guess maybe in a sense it's a warning. I would like to say it's a warning, because I know people had contacted other areas to see if they were interested in drilling again. And so I think there were boreholes, and I was like, no, you know, we already went through that previously. A lot of people passed away, a lot of people are dealing with cancer, children with various illnesses. So it's not, I don't think it's a really good thing.
So this piece is called Radon Daughter, is that right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about this piece and who's here and where?
Okay, well this is, all the pieces that I have are reflected around the landscape, in the landscape of Powhatan, because of the man-made mesas. Some are there, you know, just by nature, but some have been built, you know, because of the reconstruction of the landscape. But this one, I had my daughter in there, and how she was looking out over the landscape, and how we had the clouds, the blue clouds in the background coming down, and with the rain, and then it kind of dissipates into, you know, with the uranium coming up, or you mean yellow cake. That's the purest form of uranium. So you see them both collide in the middle. And then my daughter, I did an abstract image of her with the rain coming down on one side. So it's like she's looking over into the landscape, or a part of the landscape actually. And so that's what she's doing in this painting.
Hummingbirds make frequent appearances in your paintings. Can you talk about the hummingbird?
Yes, the hummingbird in most cultures is perceived as a good omen, and it brings a lot of messages of hope and happiness. That's what I've read, and of course I understand, but this one is on a personal level. This was, I think hummingbirds came into my life soon after the passing of my 2-year-old son, and it was awful. I mean, the whole aspect of it. He had been fighting a horrible illness, and later on, like at 2 years old, just succumbed to it. And my mom had told me that she, maybe 2 weeks or maybe a couple days after he had passed away, that there was a little tiny bird at the window, and he was clawed on and singing a beautiful little song. And my mom told me, she said, I called all your family, yeah, the rest of the family in. And that bird, for some reason, just stayed there. And he kept singing and singing. And so my mom, in our language, she spoke to the little bird, and she said that it was like as if the bird was telling her, tell my mom and my sister I'm okay. And she just believed it was my little boy, Sky. And everybody came in and they listened to that, you know, the little bird before he decided to go. And everybody's in tears, and they just felt like, man, how amazing and how blessed and fortunate that we know that he's okay. So from then on, the hummingbird just played into a majority of my work. And I just felt like how strong of a presence he is. So with this image, here it is, you find, you know, with the uranium and the mining going on, the hummingbird kind of like almost breaks apart. But yet again, he's coming together because of the rain. And the rain symbolism always brings, like he's washing away all the sadness. And he wants everything to come back together with the terms of rebirth. You know, the landscape, animals, vegetables, trees, other plant life, that everything comes back together and is healed. So I always think of the hummingbird in this image, he's coming back together. You know, he's going to be formed as one and go deliver his messages of, you know, hope and whatnot. So, yeah, this is another favorite of mine. So.
Well, thank you for sharing your art with everyone, and and thanks for sharing your time with me today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it too. Thank you so much.
A new novel released in September gives a unique perspective on the Southwest and Native culture. Shudder is a crime thriller with a touch of supernatural horror and a coming-of-age story. Now, the book follows a young woman from the Navajo Nation who becomes a forensic photographer working for the Albuquerque police, but she's hiding a secret. She can see ghosts. Correspondent Antonia Gonzalez sits down with Dene writer and filmmaker Ramona Emerson to talk about her debut book.
Ramona, welcome to New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you, Antonia. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're already well known for your filmmaking. Now here we have an acclaimed debut novel, Shudder, different form of storytelling for you. How did this book come about?
Well, I couldn't, 5 years ago I would have told you I don't even know if I could make it happen. I've never thought of myself as a fiction writer. Even the beginning of that particular book started out as a documentary idea. I thought maybe I would like to do a documentary about Navajos who deal with death in their jobs, people like police officers, doctors, pathologists, scientists, and, you know, talk about what is ingrained, how is death so foreboding for Navajo people, and why do we have our beliefs? And so I started doing research on that, but in the process of doing that, I realized that I don't know if it would make a great documentary. Not a lot of people wanted to talk to me about that, you know. So it kind of put a squash on that. But at the same time, I started to think about my own life working as a forensic videographer here in Albuquerque and how that would make an interesting story. So I kind of did an introspective and started to think, well, maybe other people don't want to talk about it, but I can talk about it. I dealt with it for 16 years. And then it started. It was a very long 10 years of writing in between film projects and in between parenting and all the craziness of life. So it took me 10 years to finish it, but I'm really happy with where it ended up.
So how much of your life, I mean, you're from the Navajo Nation. I really connected with the grandmother in the story. I mean, I was really close with my Navajo grandmother. So how much of it are people going to find that you put in with your own life experiences?
Well, I think almost all of the stuff with the grandma and the character comes from things that my grandma and myself did. I mean, I grew up with my grandma a good portion of my childhood, and you know, those are real things that we experienced and things that she would talk to me about. And you know, I think pretty much all of that is part of me. I may have embellished here and there, but those are my memories. And growing up in Tohatchi, I really wanted to make Tohatchi a character of the book because that's my hometown, and you know, and it's really important for me to showcase it and you know, talk about it the way I always remember it. And some of it's taken from my own experiences working as a forensic videographer, and just thinking about how my work impacted like my emotions and how I would think about people who I filmed for legal reasons for years, for months. I mean, their stories and their lives would impact me deeply, and I kind of used those emotions and gave them to Rita in a different way. Of course, I didn't see ghosts, and I didn't communicate with ghosts while I was working forensics. That would have probably made it a little easier, but I was able to use my emotions that I had working those cases and give them to Rita as kind of a supernatural power instead, because they evoke the same emotions in her. And she would think about their families and who they left behind. And that's what motivates you to do that kind of work.
And to add to that, it is, you know, a crime and supernatural aspects of this book. And we know there are a lot of taboos out there in tribes across the country, just not Navajo Nation, but a lot of tribes. So how did you approach that? Are you worried, or were you worried about any backlash or any criticism?
I am worried. And I have to say, when I was in the process of writing it, I would often say, oh, geez, are you going to write that? Are you going to put that in? What would your grandma say? You know, I mean, I had those internal dialogues with myself. How are Navajos going to take this story? And I realized that, I did a lot of research about death and about how Navajos came to this pinnacle of being so afraid of death that you don't even talk about it. It's not something that's even supposed to be a part of your life. And I began to realize that looking at other cultures and looking at other rituals around the world, and doing deep research about all these how different people believe and how different people think about it, I kind of felt that the Diné are real anchored to the Spanish flu, and I think the Spanish flu epidemic really had a huge impact on how Navajos feel about death and their fear of it. Because before that, the research really doesn't show that. It's like they're moving on to the next world. It's a rebirth. And then at some point it turns into this evil monster. And for me, I felt like this is a good time to have these discussions. Instead of hiding from them, we need to face them. And I think that a lot of people, like the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission, are even starting to talk about traditional funeral practices and about how we deal with death. And so I think even in mainstream academia, we're starting to really think about that and wonder if there's a different way to approach things. And so I thought that it would be a good opening for dialogue. But at the same time, I also thought, well, you know, for decades, Diné have been reading Tony Hillerman, and he talks all kinds of spooky stuff that I would never put in a book, never. And they read those books. So reading something like this that I know I didn't put any sensitive knowledge in because I know better, that they should be fine reading this book. And if we want to have a discussion about death and we want to talk about those taboos, now's the time to do it.
We know there are a lot of non-native writers out there who are writing about the Navajo Nation, who are writing about other tribes across the country. So what does it mean for you as an Indigenous person, as a woman, to be sharing and telling a story through this book, something that we understand and we know, what the do's and don'ts of?
Well, I think it really illustrates the importance of having somebody from a community represent that community and tell that story. Because not only do you get falsehoods and stories written about people or written about us from people outside of our communities, I think there's a lot of falsehoods. I think there's a lot of chance for, romanticizing our way of life. There's a lot of chance to stereotype us. And that continues to happen, and it always boggles the mind to me. I never tell stories outside of my community because, even if I was going to tell a story about a Pueblo community, I make sure that they have exhausted every resource to find somebody from their own community to do that. And if they don't find somebody, at least we can include some young people as part of the project. So they're in development. There will be somebody who can take over these stories after, I'm gone. But that's really important to me. Even through my film work, it's always been a real thorn to me to find people who continue to make these stories and continue to get funded to tell our stories when our own Indigenous filmmakers are struggling to make ends meet, are struggling to have their projects financed. So for me, it's a big stick. So writing a book like this, I think really shows that deep understanding of cultural taboo, the deep understanding of what stories you tell, what stories you have the right to tell, what stories that you should be telling. There are some stories that you should not be telling, and a lot of those people who don't come from our communities are telling that stories when they shouldn't. And, I can't stop that from happening. People are going to do what they do. But the trick is to have these discussions so that people understand why it's wrong. People understand why you don't tell that story. Out of respect, out of traditional belief, you don't tell that story, or you only tell that story during a certain part of the year. People don't understand that because they don't come from our communities. So it's really important to educate these people.
Finally this week, as we quickly approach the final month of the year, we want to take a moment to give thanks for one of Albuquerque's greatest treasures. This is a perfect time of year to celebrate all that makes the Bosque so special. From the sandhill cranes and migratory birds to porcupines and beavers and coyotes. Here's our land senior producer Laura Pascas's holiday card to this environmental gem.
In the bosque along the Rio Grande, throughout the spring and the summer, we seek out the cottonwoods for shade, rely on the river for sustenance, to water our fields, or to cool our bodies from the noonday sun. In the autumn, we celebrate the brilliance of the cottonwoods when their canopies fire the riverbanks with yellow. But by late October, especially as night starts falling earlier, it's easy to take the bosque for granted, or to stop walking beneath its canopy altogether. But I think it's the best time of year to be here. As the trees drop their leaves, it's easier to spot porcupines napping in cottonwoods and elm trees, or gnawing on bark, or finding the seeds of Russian olives. In the sands along the bank, you can see where beavers have lugged branches, dropped into the current of the river, or excavated holes to reach the tasty roots of tamarisk seedlings. Beavers themselves are hard to spot, but there are signs of their industriousness everywhere. Coyotes call out earlier in the evening, celebrating their hunt, or maybe just singing to the night. massive mobs of crows that winter in the middle Rio Grande Valley, their numbers too big to even call murders, roost at night in the bosque. They spend their days spread out across the city feeding and then return to the bosque at night, hundreds of them settling into the trees. Walk through their ranks and they'll yell at you, drop nuts and small branches on your head too. And of course, late fall is when the sandhill cranes return to the valley for winter. Today we appreciate their primordial calls. And the clunky grace of their landings in the river where they shelter for the night away from predators. They've migrated here for thousands and thousands and thousands of generations. Their habits as clear as the layers of limestone in the Sandia Mountains, their patterns tied inextricably to the sway of seasons. Today, watching the cranes along the river, it's something to imagine the blessing they must have been to the people who lived alongside the Rio Grande for centuries. To think of their mass arrival along with snow geese precisely as the weather turned cold and harvest season passed. Like New Mexicans, the Bosque, the Rio Grande, they are resilient. This river has flowed for millennia. These cottonwoods have stood since the 1940s. The forest, the wildlife have all survived the press of more and more people, more and more demands. But as the region warms, as the region dries, and everyone and everything demands more water, we also need to demand more for the river, more for the bosque. And remember, this too is our home. For New Mexico in Focus and Our Land, I'm Laura Paskus.
Thanksgiving represents a lot of things to a lot of people in our state. Some positive, some decidedly not. It's a complicated holiday. So, what can all of us celebrate this week? Our environmental correspondent Laura Paskus unfolded the answer of the entire program. It's nature and all its New Mexico bounty literally at our doorstep. This was and is the week to take a breath, step away from elections and politicians and policy fights and everything else. It can all wait till Monday. Get outside this weekend and breathe it all in. It's why we live here. Thanks again for joining us, for staying informed and engaged. Enjoy your holiday weekend. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the viewers like you.